Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be thinking about identifying inessential notes or non-chord tones. Now this is all a question of terminology, deciding where you live really, but in the UK tradition, which isn't just the UK but it's across the Far East and many other places as well, we know these as inessential notes. In the US tradition, which also rolls out in Canada and elsewhere of course, then you might know these as non-chord tones, but they're the same things as each other. And I've listed here what these various things might be, and we'll say more about that in just a moment. But first of all, let's talk about the difference between a harmony note or a chord tone and an inessential note or a non-chord tone. So if I'm in the key of C major and I use the tonic chord chord 1, C, E, G, well, I could have a melody that just uses those notes, C, E and G. Sounds okay, doesn't it? But I'm soon going to get bored of that, aren't I, really? Just using notes that belong to the chord. And of course, the other thing is, if you're just using notes that belong to the chord, you're always leaping. You're never using notes that are next door to each other. So there comes a point when a melody needs to use a little bit of scale movement as well as jumping around a bit. So this is why in any piece of music, we end up having to use these inessential notes or non-chord tones. Now, what does that actually mean? Does it mean, well, we can use some notes that belong to the chord, we can use other notes that don't belong to the chord, but it doesn't really matter what they are, we could use any old random note? Doesn't work like that, because if I use notes that belong to the chord, but I put in a few random other notes, it's going to sound a bit strange. Can see and hear, there's a couple of notes there, bit random, a bit off the wall. Well, if you want to write something that's a bit quirky, well, that could do the trick, couldn't it? But you know, they don't sound as if they really belong to what's going on. So we have a kind of code of practice, if you like, and that's what I just want to dig into a little bit during our session here. So we might have harmony notes, or what might be called essential notes, or chord tones. So that's what I've just demonstrated. First of all, just notes in the melody that belong to the chord. But you might also want to use auxiliary notes, or what's known as neighbour tones on the other side of the pond. So how do they work, the auxiliary notes and the neighbour tones? Well, say I've got a chord of C major, chord 1 in C, C, E, G. I've got C in the melody. I just go up 1 to D and come back to C. Well, I've just used one of those auxiliary notes or neighbour tones because C belongs to the chord, D is next door to it, so it's a neighbour, and it comes back to C. Okay, so I've started on a note that belongs to the chord, I've gone up 1 and I've come back to the previous note. C belongs to the chord, D doesn't belong to the chord, C does belong to the chord, but it sounds okay, so I can do that with any note of the chord. Sounds perfectly nice, doesn't it? So that's how an auxiliary note or a neighbour tone works. Apart from going up 1 and coming back, of course, I can also go down 1 and come back. C, B, C, for example, or E, D, E, or G, F, G. So whether I go up 1 and come back, or whether I go down 1 and come back, I'm using an auxiliary note or a neighbour tone. So that's how they work. Okay, now another form of inessential note or non-chord tone are the passing note or the passing tone. Now, this is distinctly different, so this is why I want to be clear about the difference between one of these and one of these. Okay, so we've just dealt with the auxiliary note or the neighbour tone. Here's the passing note or the passing tone. This is an example of this: C, D, E. So I'm still using my chord 1 in C. C and E belong to the chord, but D is tucked in between. So the D is passing between C and E. Do you see? So I'm using a note that belongs to the chord, I'm passing through D on my way to another note that belongs to the chord. I could do it the other way round. E, D, C. I could go E, F, G, because E and G belong to the chord. F is just next door, just passing through, or G, F, E. You see how that works? So, auxiliary notes, neighbour tones, passing note, passing tone, must always move by step. You can't leap when you're doing those, all right? So always moving by step in those examples. So that's how the auxiliary notes, the neighbour tones, and the passing note or the passing tone works. There's another possible option here called the anticipatory note. So say I'm using two chords, chord 5, followed by chord 1, and I have a melody that goes D, C, but I want to anticipate that final C in the melody. So I put down the D with the dominant chord, chord 5, and then I anticipate C before I play that C major chord, that chord 1. Okay, so it's just an elaboration of this in which I anticipate the last note. So the title sort of says it all. So these are very standard ways of decorating something. Okay, then we have this thing, slightly more complicated decoration called a suspension. And when you have a suspension, you have to be able to make 3 moves: prepare, sound, resolve, which I've abbreviated to PSR. P for prepare, S for sound, R for resolve, PSR. So you have to have these 3 things in place in order to make a suspension work. Other rules of engagement: P must be a note that belongs to the chord sounding at the time, so that must be a harmony note. Okay, a harmony note, an essential note, a chord tone. So P must be one of those. R must also be a harmony note, an essential note, a chord tone. S will be dissonant. In other words, S won't belong to the chord. P must belong to its chord, R must belong to its chord, S won't belong. P and S must be the same note as each other. And when you go from S to R, you need to move by step. You can't leap. And you nearly always go by step downwards. There are just very rare occasions when you might step upwards, but generally speaking, you step downwards. Okay, so that's how a suspension works. So let's think about an example of a suspension. Say I'm in the key of C major, and I've got 2 chords, F major, followed by C major. So chord 4, followed by chord 1. And I've got a melody that goes F, E. Okay, so F belongs to the F major chord, the chord 4. E belongs to the C major chord, the chord 1. But say I want to use that F as a suspension. So instead of going F, E, I go F, F, E. Oh, do you see what I've done there? F belongs to chord 4, the F major chord, so that's what I'm calling P for prepare. I play the F again as I move to the C chord, so that F is now dissonant with this chord, and now I'm resolving downwards by step to E, which does belong to the chord. So you see this, the first F is P for prepare, the last E is R for resolve, so F belongs to the F major chord, E belongs to the C major chord, S has to be the same note as P, and it's going to be dissonant. So you see how a suspension works. Now you can be even more elaborate. You can decorate your suspension by doing something like this. So if you want to do something like that, absolutely fine. If I want to label that suspension, by the way, I use 2 numbers to describe S and R, and the numbers refer to intervals above the bass. So when I get to SR, I've got C in the bass, and I'm going F, that's S, E, that's R, isn't it? So it's the 4th above the bass note to the 3rd above the bass note. So I say this is a 4-3 suspension. So I don't number the P, but I number the SR 4, 3. So if I want to decorate it, I might go 4, 2, 3. That's often how we decorate it. We just hop one note the other side and then come back to R. So that's how suspensions work. Now, these are all ways of making a piece of music sound much more interesting than it does if you're just stuck not using these. And sometimes I find this happens when people come along with a piece of music and they say, do you know, I'm sort of happy with this piece, but I'm not. You know, I've got a melody that kind of works, I've got chords that kind of work, but doesn't actually sound as exciting or as interesting as I'd like it to. And often I find the thing it's lacking are these inessential notes. And as soon as we start putting inessential notes into their score, I can see their faces light up because the music suddenly transformed into something much more interesting. Okay, now let's have a look at a little score that I've composed for the purpose. And we're going to have a look through 4 bars, 4 measures of a piece, and see if we can identify these inessential notes, or the non-chord tones. So we're in the key of A flat major, so let's just get ourselves into the right key. Scale of A flat major, A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G, A flat. So the chords 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So when we look at this, we're expecting to see those chords, those what we call the diatonic chords being used, the chords that belong to the key. But in this case, we're also going to see plenty of inessential notes. Okay, so before we start, let me just play you this piece of music so you can hear it. Okay, now if I take the inessential notes out of that, it sounds like this. Well, that sounds all right, doesn't it? But actually, it sounds so much better with the inessential notes in it. It's really the icing on the cake, isn't it? Let's have a look at what's going on. So the first bar, the first measure, we start with chord 1. Then we have double passing notes, or double passing tones, with the soprano and the tenor on those 2 B flats onto the next chord. Now, do you see why? The A flat in the soprano belongs to the chord, B flat doesn't, but it's passing by step to C. So the B flat is a passing note, or a passing tone, and it comes between the beats. So we say it's an unaccented passing note, or an unaccented passing tone. The tenor does the same. C belongs to the chord, B flat doesn't. A flat belongs to the next chord, so the B flat is just passing. And because I've got it in the soprano and the tenor parts going in opposite directions, you notice in this case, well, we've got double unaccented passing notes, or double unaccented passing tones. Here's a new chord, everything belongs to the chord. Now this D flat in the soprano, you could say, well, that's changed the chord. This is chord 6. The D flat changes the chord to 4B. That sometimes happens with inessential notes, but does it sound as if the chord's changed, or does the D flat really sound like a passing note? Well, C, D flat passing on to E flat. It's sort of functioning as a passing note. So you could say, well, no, it's not a passing note, it's just changing the chord. But it'd be quite quick to change the chords, quaver to quaver, or eighth note to eighth note. So probably it feels more like a passing note or a passing tone. Okay, you come to the third beat. Well, there's a chord, and then you think, oh, the tenor's moved. So the tenor must be doing one of these things, one of these inessential notes or non-chord tones, but actually it isn't. So we have to watch out for this, because one thing that can happen is that a part can jump to another note of the same chord, or a part can jump to another note that makes the chord richer. So here we've got a chord 5, a dominant chord on the 3rd beat. The tenor jumps, which is why we know it's not an inessential note or non-chord tone. It jumps to D flat and makes that into a dominant 7th chord. So it's just making the chord richer by going to another chord tone or harmony note or essential note. The 4th beat of the bar, well, everything just belongs to the chord, so you don't have to have these things going on every single beat of the piece. Sometimes just having a chord on its own is nice. Then beginning of measure 2, bar 2, chord 4, double passing notes, in this time soprano and the bass part. So you see that 2nd note there? They're the passing notes. They're unaccented passing notes or unaccented passing tones. Then we go on to a 4B or a 4 in 1st inversion. Then we've got movement again, but actually we're just jumping to other notes that belong to the same chord. So 4B goes to 4A, or 4 in 1st inversion goes to 4 in root position. So that movement there is all inside the chord. So you see you can have some movement inside the chord using the chord notes. Sometimes it won't. Now, what's coming up next? You think, oh my goodness, what's all this? Well, what's happening in the alto is one of these suspensions. In bar 2, measure 2, the 2nd beat in the alto, A flat, is P. The 3rd beat is S. And the note at the beginning of the 4th beat is R. So we've got A flat, G. So the first A flat is P, that's on the 2nd beat. The A flat on the 3rd beat is S. Then the G on the 4th beat is R. So P, S, R. P belongs to its chord, R belongs to its chord. P and S are the same note. S goes to R by step. So it's fulfilling all the requirements of a suspension, and this is a decorated suspension. Over the bass it's going 4, 3, but it's decorated because it's going 4, 2, 3. So you see what's happening there from the 2nd beat of that bar. And then in the alto we have a passing note, unaccented passing note. A flat's taking us on to B flat at the beginning of 3. Then we have a new chord, and then we have these double passing notes in the soprano and the tenor, unaccented because they're between the beats. New chord, passing note in the soprano, unaccented because it's between beats. Then we have a new chord, but you think, oh, that's a bit of a clash. And then we hear that note and that sounds quite good. So what's happening here is when we get to that G at the end of 3, that belongs to the chord. It's a 5-7-D chord, dominant 7th in its last inversion. So what this F is on beat 4, it's one of these auxiliary notes or neighbour tones. It's a lower auxiliary note or a lower neighbour tone, but it's coming on the beat this time. So we call it an accented lower auxiliary note or an accented lower neighbour tone. And you hear that kind of clash on the beat. It's stronger, isn't it? So most of these things are kind of off the beat. They're unaccented, but sometimes they're accented. They come on the beat, and when they're on the beat, they're stronger, like that one is. Then the 4th measure, 4th bar, ordinary chord 1 in 1st inversion. Then a chord dominant 7th, chord 5-7. Then an anticipatory note in the soprano part because we're going on to A flat. So you can hear that anticipatory note. And then in the alto part, I just couldn't resist having another suspension. So the D flat on the 2nd beat is P, the prepare. Then I'm going 4, 3 above the bass. So P, S, R. P is the same as S. S goes to R, downwards by step. P belongs to the 1st chord. R belongs to the 2nd chord. S is dissonant. So prepare, sound, resolve, and I've decorated it. So instead of going 4, 3, I'm going 4, 2, 3. Okay, so Okay, so that's how, within the space of 4 bars or 4 measures, you can have all these inessential notes. So I hope that all makes sense. Have a listen to the whole piece. So I hope that's helpful to you, whether you're analysing music, playing music, writing music, just trying to understand what's going on. That should help really lift the game. And if you've enjoyed this video, you might want to have a look at our online courses that go into much more depth on all this stuff and put it alongside all the other things that you need to know about. The course in particular that does that is our advanced theory course, so you may want to have a look at that. So go to www.mmcourses.co.uk. That will take you to the home page. Click on courses and you'll find the advanced theory course, but you'll also find other courses that are useful. So if you're thinking, well, yeah, I think I understand the theory of this, but I'm not very good at hearing it, well, you might want to look at our aural dictation course. If you're sort of thinking, yeah, I sort of basically get the idea, but I really want to get this under my fingers at the keyboard, well, have a look at our keyboard harmony course, which is going to cover all this and a heap more. And that would really help you to do that. Lots of other courses there too as well that might be of interest. While you're on the homepage, have a click on Maestros there and you'll discover what it is to be a Music Matters Maestro. It's a way of supporting our channel so that we can keep going producing all these videos, which people seem to find valuable, which is great. And also, there are many other perks. So if you want to elevate your membership, well, you can get discounts off courses. You can attend our monthly live streams where we dig into the work of a particular composer quite often and really see what's going on and examine some of the music in more detail. Or we cover other musical concerns that people have. We try to be responsive to requests made by members of the group for topics and questions that people would like answering. So you can take part in the live chat, you can comment on what we're doing, you can ask questions about what we're doing or questions about any other musical matter, and I'll do my best to answer them. And also there's another group as part of the monthly live stream thing where composers can submit their own music. You can submit a harmony exercise if you're preparing for an exam or just trying to improve your harmony. Or maybe you're a performer who wants to submit a recording of your work so that you can get some feedback on that. So I offer individual feedback, evaluation of written work, of recorded performances, and as a group we can all tune into that and learn from each other, hopefully learn from the feedback as well. And lots of people are telling us how much they value being part of that group. So if that's of interest to you, have a look at Maestros as well.